Have you ever wondered if you lost your spiritual connection or if life just made it too painful to feel? That's what we're going to be talking about today. You're listening to the new Ashla Podcast. Hello and welcome to the new Ashla Podcast. My name is Justin Gates, and joining me today, as always, is my dos amigo. We're the two amigos, I think. Michael Perry.
Hey, fam.
Not the three amigos. We got to get us another amigo. So today's show is about spiritual connection and finding that pathway back to reconnection. And this is where a lot of people find themselves, would you say?
Yeah.
And it's a really quiet, drama-free thing for most of us because it just happens over time. And these people aren't angry at God or angry at the light or angry at the universe. And they're not necessarily just rejecting belief, right? They're just kind of numb and distant or maybe disconnected in a way that feels really confusing and heavy.
Well, and sadly, I think most people are in this fear. You know, you look around and everyone's so stuck in the hustle and the daily grind and the monotony of it all and just routine, which routine's not a bad thing, but when you're not building with your life, when you're not connecting in life, you get trapped in that whole go to work, come home, watch TV type prison that just slowly, like you said, makes you numb. I mean, I've been guilty of it. I know more people than not who have been there. And yeah, it's just this almost spiritual exhaustion that happens over time.
Yeah. And of course, there are those of us who kind of interpret that as a failure of faith, a failure of some kind of moral flaw, but it's not. It's a very real human response. It's tough being a human being. So we have all of these things we have to worry about. Most of it we let happen on autopilot, which is sometimes gets us in trouble, right?
Yeah.
But I'd say for most people, this kind of feeling of sense of separation doesn't come from not believing. It comes from life, burnout, unanswered prayers, or prolonged stress.
Yeah.
Because we deal with a lot of subconscious memory, and that comes from these experiences that taught us. And we talk about this all the time because it's important, but these memories that the nervous system holds, and it tells us that openness leads to pain or betrayal or whatever, right?
Yeah. Well, I think for a lot of people, even one thing, the few times I've been in this situation is I'm stuck. They're stuck in a situation that is perpetuating this type of numbness to survive, whether that's an interpersonal relationship or that job that's just destroying their soul.
Or keeping the person from being mindful of their soul and their responsibilities to it. Yeah, because we get overloaded, overwhelmed. And this could come in the form of, prayers, feeling empty. You're just kind of going through the motions. Same with meditation. Meditation almost feels forced. I've been there. I've been there before. And it could make you feel like why spirituality can feel distant, even when the desire for it is still alive. You still want it. You still, understand you need it, but there's just some disconnection there. Yeah. And I have to imagine that it's because we get ourselves into a point where we start pitting the mind against the heart against the soul against the emotions, and we just really fall out of alignment, and we totally disconnect while still going through the motions. We're still performing, right?
Well, we get into that dissonance, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's we know better, but instead we justify it. And so it just creates this mental divide where it's easier to not think about the consequences of your lifestyle than it is to face the reality of your situation.
Yeah. And this creates a lot of shame in people, especially if they come from, very religious families or very spiritual families. And it's not something that they will admit or try to get help from because they'll feel like they're being judged, or they feel that shame where, you're sitting in stillness and feeling nothing, really. Why that connection with God or with the universe or with light or whatever used to feel alive. It used to feel exciting. Now it feels kind of like nothing, like void. And then you start to compare yourself to people who seem to have it all together, who seem super spiritual or super religious or very well connected to those things.
Well, and I mean, I think shame is at the heart of this, whether it's shame towards not being spiritual enough to just letting shame be the dominant voice in our lives and the choices we make.
Mm-hmm.
We become stagnant and we feel shameful for being stagnant, but that shame makes us feel inadequate to be more than we are. And it's so perpetuating. Kind of like you said with comparison, I was talking to my wife just yesterday about this, how like people in my life a couple years back when I was staying with my mom, I was in that bad situation. All my friends were like, look at us, we're all in these homes, we've got our lives all figured out. And to me, I never saw that as they're ahead of me.
Right.
But it was something that was really important to them. But as the years have gone on, a lot of them sort of lost touch with the connections they had for those homes, for where they were living, and those jobs they left or moved on from. And now they're sort of starting at square one again. And now they're trying to compare themselves to me and seeing me get ahead. And it's like, hey, bro, like, I'm not someone you need to compare yourself to. Like, you need to compare yourself to yourself, and not even to who you were 5 years ago, to who you were yesterday.
Right.
Like, that's the only comparison you should make.
That's right. There's an axiom. The axiom we're going to use to anchor today's show is: release what you think you know, for fixed ideals and a hardened mind are poison. Remain open and accepting to all possibilities. This reconnection begins by letting go of these rigid ideals and these painful thoughts and things we have about ourselves, and these rigid ideals about what spirituality should actually feel like. When you came to me for mentorship and teaching, I never told you what to expect. I could take you to a sunrise and let you soak it in, and you must describe how it feels to you. It's never going to be the same, right?
Yeah.
I can show you a great many things, wonderful things, but for it to be authentic and for it to be genuine, you must connect that within. And that's a place that I can never know truly, fully.
No. Well, I think this is the perfect axiom for this, because I know for me, a lot of my stagnation, even when I got into self-help and I'm trying to understand myself, all this information was great. Mm-hmm. But at the time, it had to work with my current understanding and map of the world.
Yes.
The more rigidly I held to that map, the less I allowed information to filter in. And it wasn't until life me that I was like, all right, I don't know anything, and I need to just look at the world through the eyes of a child. And that's when I was able to truly let wisdom come to me. And still, after all this time I've spent doing this, I still know nothing. It's just the best mentality to have.
Yeah, it keeps us curious. But this axiom, you're right. This axiom attempts to guide us instead of condemning, right? And because when we cling to these rigid ideals of what should be or what something should feel like based on a comparison to what we think others are doing or what others are telling us they're doing, we harden ourselves against what's actually happening in the moment, what's actually going to happen. And we try to force that, or we try to control that, then what we find is emptiness. What we find is a void. And we start to disconnect ourselves, because connection is truly going with the flow and the vibration of what's happening. And what this does, this axiom's telling us not to poison ourselves through expectations, through fixed expectations and these rigid ideals, right?
Yeah.
Because reconnection does not start by forcing belief or by accepting dogma. It's simply releasing the demand that connection look the way that it did in the past, as you said, or what it should look like in the future. We have to experience it now, because everything fluctuates, everything moves, everything changes. And you said it perfectly. You had to allow yourself to sit with it as you are now. It's important to remember that the light never leaves us. The light never leaves us. It waits. It waits for us to reconnect. It waits for us to become aware again, to remember. There is no distance from the light. There is none. And of course, the ethos that'll be anchoring our episode today would be truth and connection. Connection's an obvious one. Why is truth so important?
I think when it comes to being in these types of spiritually desolate times of our lives, it's usually through the denial of truth. It's the avoidance of accountability, avoidance of reality. So I think truth is one of the most important things that can push through the fog and bring us back to connection.
Yeah, you're right, because truth kind of asks us, or really almost demands that we stop pretending that we're fine when we're not. And that's very important in this path, in this work, in shadow work and healing of any kind. It's about knowing what you're up against, knowing where you need help, knowing where that disconnection is. Sometimes it's in the body, sometimes it's in the mind, sometimes our hearts are closed, sometimes our souls are tired, right? It's just, but we cannot begin to heal if we don't know what's wrong. So, and of course, connection reminds us that separation isn't healed by performance. Presence over performance, presence over perfection every time, right?
Yeah.
When we allow ourselves to tell the truth about the disconnection, about the problems, about the traumas, the pains, whatever, without shame, without blame, especially self-blame here, because you're just being a human at this point. It's fine. You'll get there. But the first thread of reconnection starts to form when we can be truthful and honest with ourselves. That's when we can start that journey again.
To be able to peer through the complacency you feel in that moment.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, again, I think about those times in my life where I got stuck in a cycle and I'm working that dead-end job, and it's just every day I'm going in, I feel my soul going away from me, but I'm just, it's like, this is life, go to work, come home, dissociate and distract, go back to work, and it's just unending.
Right.
And I'm not thinking about what do I do to change this, I just accept this as my reality.
Well, that brings us to what this disconnection really is. What is, by your estimate, what is spiritual disconnection? It definitely is a lot of numbness and stuff. And
yeah. It's we all know what it's like to have the wonderment of a child, to think back to all the excitement and joy you had of life moving on around you. And, I'm not going to say we will always have the livelihood of a child, but when you start to dissociate, when you're in those situations and life just becomes just a day in, day out process, like you lose that wonderment that is life. And I think that's one of my key things I look for now is it's like, am I bored with life now? And am I disconnected from living a life of purpose?
Right.
And it doesn't mean that I'm out there changing the lives of thousands of people, but I'm making steps to grow, to become more, to take care of myself, and to find enjoyment in life. Like, that was one thing that was really hard for me when I started the healing journey, is I realized most of my life I never felt worthy of being content and be complacent. And that's a level of dissociation that happens when we're disconnected from God, because God loves us for who we are, not who we're becoming.
Yeah. There is a cynicism that starts to show up too, besides the numbness, right? We start to, and I'm not talking about a healthy dose of that. We should always trust yet verify everything. Should always ask questions, right? Never get rid of
Keep expectations down a bit. Yeah.
Right. Well, just don't expect the answer that you want, right? I mean, because sometimes the answers aren't what you expect. But when there's this real kind of Debbie Downer about all the stuff he once loved, emotional shutdowns, and again, going through those spiritual motions, the practices and the literature and whatever used to bring you joy, no longer does, right? Prayer just becomes words instead of actually communing. Meditation becomes just another stupid task instead of a place for you to do all the good work, and if you do rituals and stuff, you still got to go through the motions on those too, but your heart's not in it.
It comes from a place of practice instead of a place of fulfillment.
Right.
Which, it's okay to have those periods. I'm not saying that is a low point. We will all have those lulls in life where we're just maintaining a routine.
Yes.
But there's a difference between a couple weeks lull and a couple years.
Yeah. And you and I quite often run into people where some religious authority or spiritual authority actually harmed, and then they got no closure. They got no kind of moving on point from there. And we see that a lot too. Or when life delivers a blow that doesn't make any sense and you can't make any sense of it, you know, there's your soul won't rebel, it'll withdraw, kind of, right? And
Yeah.
and we like to look at ourselves and judge ourselves really hard that withdrawal is I'm just becoming weak, or I'm a failure, or when it's actually a built-in super intelligent survival response.
Well, it's like, I think also there's just a lot of people who, I mean, they grow up in religion having this perception of how God and life works pushed upon them. And as they get into life, they realize it's not Santa Claus, right? It's not the way it was portrayed to them. And so they leave religion altogether, they leave faith altogether.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that affects them on every level of their body, as if it were them hurting themselves. If, because everything we feed to the subconscious, it doesn't have a sense of humor. It doesn't have really much of a sense of anything that we understand, from the human perspective. It hears something, it sees something, it experiences something. And if you don't take steps to address that, then it just becomes a repeating pattern over and over and over again.
Well, and just like the cynicism you brought up earlier, those who are without faith of any kind are the most cynical people you'll meet.
Yeah, and it's a really sharp cynicism too. Again, we're not talking about that healthy curiosity, that healthy questioning. We should question everything. I've been thrown out of church before when I was a kid for being curious. I was okay with that. It did make me hate religion or spirituality. I just assumed they just weren't ready to be challenged or to have a kid ask them questions. But for many people, it does cause damage. It does cause problems. There's something else that happens when we have this, again, going back to these rigid ideals of what spirituality has to be and how it has to feel. We see this a lot. We've talked about this many times, where spirituality must always feel peaceful or uplifting, or unicorns and rainbows and clouds and beautiful angels with harps, and that's not how life works. Just because something hard doesn't mean it's not good.
Yeah.
And just because something's really easy doesn't mean it's not going to damage you some way. Right.
I'll be honest, one of the greatest awarenesses I had at a young age that I'm so thankful I've carried through life is I noticed anytime I went through something rather difficult emotionally, spiritually, whatever in life, I always came out better for it. At least majority of the time. And so whenever, especially in my adult years, I went through something, I'd always be like, all right, there's a lesson to be learned here. And I was so thankful to have that perspective, because those dark moments are the place where people turn bitter.
When did you start dabbling in philosophy, just in general?
Honestly, it was shortly before I met you. I loved Buddhism and stuff like that. I loved quotes growing up. And it would always be like, there's wisdom to that. I resonate with that. But it was nothing I ever pursued. And it wasn't until, I was going through one of these spiritual declined phases of my life where it was just going and working a job in a horrible relationship, and I started picking up Marcus Aurelius and different books to be like, all right, what I need to look at life on a deeper level. And that's really when I dove in my mid to late 20s.
Right. Okay. Because philosophy, the philosophers, those considered to be, the foundation for Stoicism, that does help us navigate those hard things you were talking about with more grace and more understanding. But even Stoicism can be taken to an extreme, as we talked about on last show, where you just go into complete emotional numbness. And that's not what they were trying to get us to do. Balance in all things. So, again, it's these rigid beliefs that we have about an experience. And just because we experience something and we can, say, oh, well, it's going to feel like this again. It doesn't always work that way, especially if you're in the middle of shadow work. Everything feels way different, and sometimes scary and hard and hurtful and painful, right? So, but again, I just want to reiterate that the light, God, whatever you believe, They never leave you. It's there, just waiting for you to remember. It's got all the time in the world, right? So what kinds of things make us turn numb or harden our spirituality or disconnection?
You know, I'm going to use a very vague term that we love to say, but trauma. You know, life will humble us, and if we choose to let life take us down and not grow and learn for it, we let it turn us cold and bitter, then we will lose connection to the divine.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like it'll feel like you lose God's grace because it starts becoming this contagious mentality. I've seen this with a handful of people, so I can't fully speak to it, but a good amount of people where they go through something really traumatic, something really dark,
Mm-hmm.
and instead of trying to rise from it or grow from it, which don't get me wrong, trauma will humble us and it's all about working with ourselves. But
Yeah.
if we choose to blame and not take accountability for our lives, to be victims of the lives we have and not grow, you know, we calcify. It becomes the world is happening to us.
Right. And going back to the axiom, that hardened position, that fixed mind, probably started because it needed to protect us from something. That's where we started developing that, right? And then that leads into performance and numbness and all these things that we're talking about. But while it's protecting us, it blocks us from being present. Armor is good in certain situations, but it's never meant to be worn all the time, right? Going back to the book, the Knight in Rusty Armor. Yeah, he was protected, but he couldn't move eventually. Like he was stuck in there forever.
Well, I love how you said it earlier. I mean, it's just like trauma teaches the nervous system that openness is dangerous. We
Mhm.
learn that we have to covet our truths, our vulnerabilities. We have to hide our true selves away and parade around as something different.
Yeah.
We learn it's not safe to be open. And a lot of the times it's just the stories we're telling ourselves because of one bad experience or a couple bad experiences. But man, that is a rough place to be when you start wearing that armor anywhere and everywhere.
Yeah. Yeah. And all things have their uses. Not all things are meant for all things. You can't use a hammer against, you know, trying to clean your window. You're going to clean it all right. It's going to be see-through. But this takes us back to our ethos of truth. And this is where it becomes really essential, because reconnection begins with that honest self-recognition, not judgment, not fixing. Stop trying to fix everything. Just at first, simply acknowledging, I I ended up this way for a reason. Let's investigate that little by little, right? And when we can do that without blame or shame, we can start to retrain these things that are trying to protect us and let them know that, hey, we're not in danger. It's all good. And they'll start to harden, or they'll start to soften. And this allows that light to kind of reconnect to us. Again, it's there. It wants to connect. But there's something important I want to talk about next, is that reconnection is in allowing this experience, not by believing more. Michael, just believe more. Believe harder. Damn it, believe harder. We have to allow ourselves the experience, even the tough ones, especially the tough ones, because those are the ones that are going to probably teach us more, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, completely. I mean, again, I love how you say that, how it's not about believing more, but about experiencing more. You know, again, not blame and shame. And when it comes down to that, it's being able to take stock of the part we play in our own suffering without judging ourselves through stillness and things where we are in the present, where we can see the awe that is around us. Because I really think that is the number one thing that connects us to the divine, is being able to be in wonder with the world around us, with the beauty of all things.
Yeah. Yeah. Even the things that make us feel uncomfortable, because there is that inherent greatness in all things under creation. But this kind of reconnecting spiritually rarely, if ever, happens at the level of belief. Now, I will say this. I do, even with you and with anyone who's ever talked to me, I do encourage people to take stock and to take inventories of the things that they believe and the things they think and the things they do, right? Because sometimes you may have outgrown a philosophy, or you may have outgrown a set of beliefs. This is not what I'm talking about here. What I'm talking about here is forcing that level of belief to go higher, as if you just weren't believing enough.
Right.
And most people won't reconnect because they finally think the right thoughts or adopt a better philosophy.
Yeah.
They reconnect because they allow themselves to open up and soften and feel something again.
Well, and I would even be as bold as to say many people, unless you're actively going to church every weekend, there's a very high chance you don't even know how to contextualize what your idea of God is beyond a higher power. I think many people that believe in a higher power don't have really a belief system. It's something they've never taken the time to really reflect upon, which is why I think that's so important.
Yeah. Reconnection happens through lived experience. Period. Good night, everybody. No, just kidding. It happens in those moments of stillness if we are present. This allows us to calm ourselves and to start to reprogram the parts of our body and get it back into alignment with our mind and our heart, right? And our soul. Because we have to give ourselves space to settle and not let our mind just endlessly narrate nonsense at us all day long.
Right.
You know, it happens in nature where nothing demands belief, explanation, or performance. The body simply remembers that it belongs if you come into alignment. It happens through breath, and not as some fancy technique to master, but as that quiet rhythm that brings you back into your body. It settles your mind and makes your heart feel safe, right? And gives your soul something to reconnect to.
What I think an important thing also to bring up is people lose faith due to, oh, God's not doing anything in my life. God's not fulfilling what I need. And it's like one of the realizations I've had as I've started traversing this path is just like, God will always meet you, but you have to be able to put work forward. You can't sit on your couch and say, I want $1 million and expect it to just appear. You know, build the business, have the dream in your mind, but you put 40% out there, God will give you 60%, is how I look at it. That is the ratio to me. And sometimes it'll be a little harder. A lot of times it'll be a little easier. But if you want God to work miracles in your life, you got to meet him halfway.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's why forcing belief almost always fails. And I would almost say it probably always fails to some degree. There's always exceptions to the rules, I know. But when we try to force it, it tries to operate from the mind outward and ignores the other three parts of us.
Yeah.
Our body, our heart, or emotions, and our soul. Reconnection moves from experience inward, just like all things we talk about. It starts inside. And when someone demands certainty before they allow openness, it ain't ever going to happen. It ain't ever going to happen. They literally cut themselves off from the very thing they're seeking.
God's favorite place to meet people is in the unknown.
In your hearts, yeah, in the unknown. In that, you call it the void, but I call it the field of possibility, right? But meaning and understanding will always come after openness and presence. Those two things have to be first, always. And this is where we fall back to the axiom again. Because the axiom tells us that we have to learn to release the need to know every damn thing and to control every damn thing. It allows us to feel that's a very important part of us. Not all messages we receive do we read or hear, right? We talk about this all the time. Everything that happens in us, inside of us, and around us can be teachers, are certainly messengers.
Well, one thing I've really learned when it comes to faith and understanding the universe's divine plan is it's like, if the universe, you're putting the effort out there and the universe isn't meeting you, it's probably because it has something even better planned for you.
Or you have some things blocking you. You have to let go of different things, or maybe all things. When you stop demanding answers and just allow yourself to be present with what is real in this moment, the connection you thought was lost or was lost for you will start to appear back on its own. It just requires openness and presence, period. You can't beat this thing to death. You just can't, right? You can't. Connection doesn't live in concepts or declarations, Michael. Connection lives in shared or lived moments, moment to moment to moment. And you can't think your way back to faith. You can't think it back to anything. But again, you have to experience yourself honestly, and that could be one breath at a time, one moment at a time, one honest encounter with what is. So, what blocks reconnection? Okay, so I noticed that I'm being really cynical, and oh man, I'm figuring out that I've kind of put these blocks in myself, or I'm disconnecting. What kinds of shadows may block our attempts at reconnection?
As you say, cynicism, one of the key words I was thinking of is doubt. Whether it's doubt in the divine, doubt in ourselves, or doubt in others. When we doubt the ability for things to get better, they often don't. And usually we don't have the energy to put forward to try to make them better. Because we've already made our claim it's not going to.
Yeah.
I think another thing is things like hate. When you harbor resentment, it will weigh down on you more than anything else. It'll make you bitter to the world. It'll make you jump to anger. And it'll corrupt your ability to connect with God, with people, with life.
Yeah. One of the things is something that we do with each other. We talked about this a few episodes where we try to meet people where they used to be instead of meeting them where they are. Yep. Right? We try to reconnect almost like exactly as it was. And you talked about this a little bit already, but we try to measure this connection, how it felt, how it's supposed to be, against a past version of ourselves when prayer felt more alive, or when meaning felt obvious and purpose was easy to find. And this, of course, leads to frustration, which is a barrier to connection. As you said, if we're frustrated, how can we connect? If I'm frustrated with a person, I can't connect with them. I have to figure out how to let that go before I can. Because honestly, the path back is rarely the same as the path forward. Wouldn't you say?
Yeah. Well, it's never the same because it's always, everything is a lesson, good and bad. I mean, the more you can look at things as not good and bad, but just lessons, the more you can end up finding the truth within all things. Yeah. You can find growth in all things.
Yeah. Another one is comparison. We talk about comparison a lot because it really does hinder us. It really does cause us problems when we're comparing ourselves to anything for any reason. You can never measure your inner life against other people's outward expressions or teachings or their experiences. You just can't. It's not because you can't kind of get a sense for who they are or how they feel or the things they're doing. It's just simply because we can take 100 of you listeners right now, all go out and look at the sunset, and we're going to have 100 different experiences. That's just the way it is. And that's the way it was designed. It's supposed to be that way, right? So we don't all just collectively say, oh, that's cool, and then, lose our awe and lose the meaning for what we're supposed to be doing and what's here.
Expectation,
yeah. Yeah, that's another one, right? And I didn't so much see this in you because I think you had some experience in this, but almost every time I get a new student and it's time to learn meditation, and they just assume that it's like being plugged in. Like, remember how Neil gets plugged in and can learn Kung Fu in 10 minutes? You think that's what it's like, and it's like, no, it's a lot more boring than that. For the most part, you can have these really cool, like every once in a while, Heather will share something that she's seen in a meditation, and it's just like, man, you have the coolest meditations. Mine aren't that cool usually. I do have cool ones, but
yeah. I hardly ever do guided meditations, but I remember when I was first going into practice and doing shadow work, and I was digging deep. I was going through the trenches of emotions, and I was trying to find answers. And I remember it was like, I spent literally 3 hours in front of a candle, just letting my mind do its thing before I had that aha moment. And it was just a fraction of what I was trying to understand. Right. But it is diligent work that is not prompt. And again, it's like often we want that clarity, we want that result, we want that situation or relationship. And that is not the path the universe has planned for us. It will happen in its due time.
Blessed are those who can sit without expectation, because for most of us, that's a tough one. It sure was for me, right? I've talked about my struggles about learning meditation and making it a regular practice on other episodes, but for those of you who can truly look at these practices with that curious mind of a child and not expect anything, bless you. You are blessed, because the rest of us have to struggle to get through it sometimes.
Yeah.
And it's important to remember also, reconnection doesn't usually begin with some feeling of inspiration or awakening. It's needs to begin with that allow that disconnection to be seen without judgment, and to be able to say, hey, this is just where I am right now, but not allowing that to be your mantra.
Right.
Acknowledging it and then choosing to stay present anyway. What are some pathways back to connection? What are some things we could do?
Presence, man. I tell you what. Again, when I talk about that whole routine where people just get in and it's work, come home, dissociate, often people are refusing to be present with the moment.
Yeah.
And I mean, that can be a walk in nature, but again, a walk in nature, no music, no nothing. Be involved with the present moment. Allow your thoughts to come up. Allow yourself to feel what you've been running from. Allow yourself to question the life you're leading and if you want change and what you'd have to do to change.
Yeah. One of your favorites, spending time in nature.
Yeah.
It almost heals all things that ails us sometimes, right?
Or your favorite, journaling.
Journaling. Yes, but I want to be clear here. When we're working on reconnection, I want you to try to journal without using any kind of, spiritual language. Just speak plainly to yourself, honestly, plainly, about what you feel, where you feel it, what you don't feel, why are you confused, or what's confusing you, what hurts you, where does it hurt? Because a lot of us who have been in kind of walking these kind of paths for a long time, we start to put some kind of weird pressure on ourselves to always sound wise or faithful, right? And look, truth knows better.
Yeah.
If you're not feeling it, you're not feeling it, and you don't need to try and lie to yourself, because that is the worst lie you could tell, is the one you tell yourself.
No.
Truth doesn't need some kind of decoration. You're not putting, things on a tree.
Well, I think an important thing here too is you don't have to have all the answers.
Right.
It's good to have the questions, just let them exist. Allow yourself to go through life without needing to know everything.
Mm-hmm.
The more you can release your need to control and feel right about everything, the more you allow yourself to truly see things as they are and not the way you want them to be.
Yeah. There's another big step here. Once we start these practices and once we start to really honestly look at ourselves, we have to put a lot of trust in something that we may not be able to see or explain, right? We got to trust that return to connection, because like we said, it doesn't respond to command or just try harder or believe harder, Michael. It responds to a space that we create where we can be honest with ourselves and without judgment or shame or guilt or blame. When your body and your heart no longer feel under pressure to perform or prove something or to feel something specific, these things start to happen naturally. Now, we got to let go. This is where we got to really let go and just trust what's happening, right?
Yeah. Well, again, it's that unknown. That is, in my opinion, God's favorite place to meet us is when we're willing to get out of that comfort zone and go into the unknown. One of my favorite quotes of all time. This year, it has been like my trademark quote. The magic you are looking for is in the work you are avoiding.
Yeah.
And what that really means is it's like, we know what we need to do to change our lives. But we have to be willing to step into that discomfort of the unknown to claim what we want.
Right.
Even if that means we mess up, even if that means we lose, as long as we keep taking that work and trust.
And even if it takes longer than we want it to.
Yeah. Man, people don't like that one.
They don't. They don't. That's why law of attraction misses them all the time. We talked about this before, right? Wish it, want it, do it, then let it go. That is the correct sequence.
Yep, you're putting all the ingredients together, throwing that cake in the oven, and it's up to the universe when that cake's going to be done.
Well, stop checking it all the time because you're just letting the heat out, right, of the oven.
Yep.
You gotta just give it some time. It'll be done when it's done, right? And this trusting this return back to this connection, it's allowing the process to unfold, as we say all the time, without any rigid timelines. Now, it's okay to have some sort of timeline when we're especially when we're working with goals. Those help us keep focused, but you don't get to always choose, how and when. And this is where, if it makes you feel better, this is where awareness is powerful, because you can really look for and start kind of trying to be aware of the small, subtle shifts, but you can't mess with them. Leave them alone. Stop messing. Stop opening the oven. And let it cook. Yep. Let it cook. So life doesn't rush. It takes its time. It's in its own rhythms, right? And growth happens at a pace that is best for us, because it meets us where we're at, right? And that level of healing is where it's going to meet us. If we're not quite ready, it could be harmful for us for it to happen. So it grows at this pace. I'll say it grows at a pace that safety allows, right?
Yeah. Well, I think, man, you brought up the law of attraction earlier, and it's like one of those common misconceptions, right? If you are wanting to build this dream life, but you're coming at it from a place of lack and not a place of deserving that life, like, that is what you're going to bring into your life. Often people are trying to steamroll ahead or be entitled, and it's like we got to meet ourselves where we're at, and we have to be able to build that confidence and competence. It's something that we have to develop over time, because when you come from a place of scarcity and lack and you're wanting to, again, have your dream life, you're going to have all these issues come up in that pursuit that's going to lead to that cynicism. It's going to lead to that doubt. The divine meets you where you're at, but you have to be willing to do the same.
Right. Well said. You have any final thoughts for our show today?
If you're someone who's feeling stuck in life, especially when it comes to being connected with God, if you feel like God's abandoned you, you feel like you just lost that connection, it is always there. You just have to be able to reach for it. You have to be willing to reach for it. Connection lies in presence, but it also lies in truth. You got to be able to look in the mirror and ask yourself, what is the part I'm playing in this life I have now? And what steps do I need to change it for what I do want? And God will meet you. The universe will meet you. But you have to be able to meet yourself where you're at and take those steps that feel so uncomfortable, trusting in the unknown and what lies ahead of you.
Well said. Our affirmations for today. I do not need to force connection. I allow it to return naturally. My honesty is a sacred doorway back to the light. Even in numbness, I am still connected to something greater than myself. I trust the quiet ways reconnection unfold within me. I release rigid expectations and remain open to what is real now. Our journal prompts. When did I first start feeling disconnected, and what was happening in my life at that time? What beliefs about spirituality might I be holding that feel heavy, rigid, or inherited rather than lived? Where do I already feel small moments of connection in my daily life, even if they don't look spiritual? What emotions have I been avoiding that might be asking to be acknowledged before reconnection can happen? If connection returned gently rather than dramatically, what might it feel like in my body? So, look, you may not have actually lost your connection. This might be the after effects of an adaptation, adapting to something, adapting to pain or loss, disappointment, or to moments where openness felt too costly or too scary. What looks like spiritual distance is often spiritual intelligence doing what it needed to do to keep you functioning. There is no failure in that. There is wisdom in survival. Survival is not a bad thing, even though we kind of talk a lot about it. But there is wisdom in it. Reconnection is not something you earn by believing harder or praying louder or fixing yourself. It's not an achievement. It is a remembrance. It happened when that guard at the gate of our hearts relaxes and that heart is allowed to open and feel again without being interrogated, right? This is why proof has never been the doorway. The moment you demand certainty, the body tightens. The mind tricks. The moment you soften, presence returns. Spiritual connection does not arrive with answers. It arrives with just being enough. So let this be the reflection that you carry forward from today's episode. You don't have to believe harder. You only need to soften enough to start feeling. And a very simple call to action I have today, just work on releasing just one fixed idea about what spirituality is supposed to look like or feel like. One image or one expectation or one comparison. Instead of seeking certainty, create space. Instead of chasing meaning, allow presence. Let it be a quiet breath or a still moment or a sense of grounding. Let those be enough, because they are. And remember this as you go. The light was never gone. It was waiting for you to come home without needing proof in its existence. I want to thank you guys so much for joining us today. Make sure to check out our socials, the YouTubes, the TikToks, the Facebooks. What am I missing? Spotify. They're already listening on Spotify.
All of the aboves.
All the above, all the podcast places that you love. If we're not there, drop us a comment and I'll make sure we get there. If we're not at your favorite spot. But we're at a lot of those, right? And check out the website, newashla.com. It's constantly adding new things. Have you started stuff back up on Sunday?
Nope, starting this Sunday, you'll get your next blog, though. So.
All right, so he's dropping stuff on Sundays. I've got things also hitting on Wednesdays and Fridays, so it's always constantly being updated. But we thank you guys so much for joining us. Michael, thank you, my friend.
Of course, always a pleasure.
And with love and gratitude, ad lucem.
Ad lucem.